Hello, 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 and welcome to the Stride Report podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zalin. How's it going, man?
Ben, big news. Both the Steelers and Eagles are undefeated.
In preseason.
No. Hey. They're undefeated. 1-0. Okay. I don't care. We're not that way. If they lose at any other point in this preseason, then we can just restart. And then when they win their first games, we can be like 1-0. Path to the
There
Super
you
Bowl.
go. Did you watch any of the preseason games?
Yeah. And it's preseason, right? And the
Yes.
Steelers third stringers are in. And I'm watching, the Jaguars about to storm back down the field for a touchdown. This is the game where they had a 70-yarder, and I'm
Yeah.
nervous. I'm like, why am I nervous? Why? Maybe it's because I had money on the game, which I won. But that's not the point, okay? It's I was nervous.
Good. That's a cry for help, having money on a preseason game. That's
Not
good,
when you
Garrett.
win. Not when you win. So, yeah. Hey, listen. It was $10. It wasn't 1,000. Okay, there's. But listen, when you're as talented as I am, okay. But no. Anyways, we have team rankings to chat about today. That's the actual thing that we need to talk about. And then what else are we gonna? Oh, well, I guess just team rankings. That's right. That's the only thing on our plate, right?
Yep, that's all we got. But speaking of a cry for help, I think we could use a cry for help for ratings and reviews because we are at 0 for this past week in both Apple and Spotify. So make sure you guys get that in. Team rankings, like Garrett said, have begun on the site. We're going to talk through just missed, honorable mention, and then get through the first couple teams, starting at the 25th ranked teams on both the men and women's sides. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. Make sure you guys can follow along with the releases on social media, on the site. If you get a subscription, you're going to be able to read the in-depth analysis. I think this is some of the best work that we do are these preseason rankings. So make sure you check those out. Chock full of great information. But with that out of the way, let's go to just missed and honorable mention. Who was on the men's side? Let's start here. Who was that team? Who was the last cut in your mind for the just missed out on the ranking of number 25?
And we're starting on the men's side.
Yes.
For me, it was Wyoming. I really like Wyoming. I thought they were underrated going into last year. I think both you and I were probably one of the first people to be like, hey, Wyoming might make the national meet. Hey. And sure enough, they did. They weren't amazing at the national meet. They struggled. But this year, they lose pretty much their 3 through 7, which sucks. But Jacob White, Riker Holtzen are really good 1-2. White ran, I think 13:27 in the 5K this past spring. Holtzen ran 8:34 in the steeplechase. They were a great 1-2 punch last fall. And now they had Matthias Chavan, from Illinois State. And he's really solid. Like, he's just overall a very strong name, has consistently held his own on the grass. He's 13:48 for 5K. Together, that's a really good 1-2-3 punch. And so when I look at that, I'm like, man, are you mean to tell me that squad can't be top 25, at least right now? And, maybe Aiden Ramsey, a 14:04 5K guy, can give them that little bit of an edge. But the depth is just way too questionable. We still want to see what Chavan can do before I can personally put them at 25.
Yeah. I think this just missed list is a good indicator of what the men's rankings are, where there are just pretty gaping holes in a lot of these resumes for these teams. And it's just about, hey, which ones do you feel most comfortable with? For Wyoming, they do have that strong top 3, which again, in the 20 through 25, that can actually land you in a pretty good spot in our rankings.
Yep.
But again, the uncertainty is there. And to a similar extent, it's the Missouri Tigers. Now, I don't think they're necessarily my last team out or first team out, but it's a very similar kind of structure, right? Drew Rogers, Elijah Limo, Raymond Kipkoech, like, again, a solid top 3, but they just, again, don't have any depth. Who I'm going to go with as my 26th team is Tulsa. And
Mm.
again, this is more of a program
Yep.
ranking, I think, than a, hey, this is what the roster looks like right now. You have a true low stick who at his best is one of the best runners in the country in Shea McAvoy. And then you have a coach that has traditionally recruited very well from overseas, transfers, put together just enough. It's not ever going to be a deep lineup. You're probably relying on 5, maybe 6 guys going into every race, but they usually put it together when they need to at regionals, at nationals. Last fall wasn't great, but I still have confidence in, again, in a year where the top, like the 20 through 30 teams in the country are just, they're not the quality that I think we've seen before. I would not be surprised to see Tulsa make a jump up in our rankings over the next like month or month, I guess 6 weeks, let's say,
Right.
when we see, hey, there's 1 or 2 guys that kind of is running well, and all of a sudden they have a more complete lineup than what we're seeing on paper right now.
Yeah, I think people forget like Tulsa wasn't like initially favored to make the national meet.
No, no,
Like
no,
they
no.
were on the fringes. Like the fact that they got in was a pretty significant win for them, and I
Yep.
think some people might kind of forget about that. Shane McAvoy has been. How do you say that name? You said it so perfectly. How do you say it?
McAvoy. I said
McAvoy.
McAvoy. Yep.
McAvoy. Yeah. He's really good. Like he was almost a top half All American in 2023. I want to say maybe even 2022, but now that he's at his best, we saw him have an encouraging spring season. He'll offer more firepower. There are even more options this year compared to last year. They lose one key names, but outside of that, the mass number of returners they have, plus the just generally improved depth that they get from both overseas and within the transfer portal, um, they're definitely going to be better than last year. It's just like a matter of like how much better. And I don't think we have an answer to that yet. And I don't think there's anything that's changing so dramatically to the point where we had quite enough to put them in the top 25. But when you factor in that program history and what they're able to do year in, year out, I see the argument. I see the logic.
Yeah, and again, this isn't me banking on them putting together top 20 kind of results this year, but I do think just they have a higher floor than a lot of
Yeah,
these other
I
programs
agree.
around here, where it's like, all right, they might just fall like right into 26th, 24th place finish at nationals just due to competence, right? And I think that's what you're banking on with Tulsa.
100%. 100%. All right, you go tell me who's your women's team, just Miss Sad, that you really wanted to get into the rankings, but we couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, this one for me was easy, and I think they have a compelling argument to be ahead of our 25th team, and that was Clemson. I just, you look at that top 3, and again, you compare that to some of these other teams, like in the 20 to 25th parts of our ranking on the women's side. And I mean, they got, oh, maybe better overall depth, but they still got a lot of question marks with their depth. Now, again, Clemson's depth is not good. I like that needs to be outlined. And obviously, there's potential for possibly another move. And they're always bringing in talented men and women. So hey, maybe they get somebody. But even if they don't, I still love this top 3 in this range where you don't have a whole lot of like constants to really hold on to very tightly. You can with this top 3, at least in terms of their talent, right? They're going to have more talent than any of these other teams in this range through 3, and that's why I think they, for me, maybe even deserved a spot in our top 25.
Um, I get it, but I think it's very easy to look at that top 3 and be like, "That's a really good top 3." But in the grand scheme of things, between now and last year, not really anything has changed with this team.
No.
Like they were 11th at ACCs last fall, 11th, and that was with 3 women cracking the top 12. So like what's changed? They added Emily LaMontague, who's am I saying that right? LaMontague? Lamontagna, sure. I tried. And she's run 16:19 for the 5K this past spring. So like, yeah, maybe she raises their ceiling, their floor, excuse me, a little bit.
Yeah.
But even if she does, I don't think there's enough for us to be like, Yeah, throw him in there. It's the top 25. Now, we've been told that there is potential for them to potentially sign another name. Potentially, it seems like international. Not entirely sure yet, but if that happens, then yeah, they're probably deserving of being ranked. But that hasn't happened yet. There's only a few weeks until the seasons begin.
Yep.
We're left doing what we have, and I thought it was validated to put them in at just
Yeah.
miss.
I mean, I think a lot of what it comes down to is does Jalego, Kozgi, and Chepnogenic run to their fullest capabilities, right? Because if they do, and they're pretty consistent, it's going to be hard for them not to make the national meet, if they, like just from a
I don't know.
numerical perspective.
They were pretty good last year and they still didn't make it. Like the only time that they were all like not like at their best was the national meet. And it's not like they were like horrible at the national meet. They just weren't amazing necessarily.
Right.
So I don't
But they
know.
made the national meet. That's what I'm saying.
Well, those three did. The women, the team as
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
did not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't see it. I just don't.
Fair. Fair. Who do you have as your 26?
So my team, and I have to be honest, if I were to pick a 26 team, Clemson would have probably been it. Well, I don't know. I take that back. I don't know. Again, I think it's like the team that I don't know. We already talked about this. I'm just struggling. You can see the internal challenges I'm having. I'll go Northwestern. Northwestern. This is a team that turns out I like them a lot more after writing about them. They do lose two veterans, Chloe Wellings and Catherine Hessler, which really stinks. But I really like Ava Earl. I think she's a very underrated lead scorer. I think Holly Smith is very underrated. She ran 16:01 for 5K this past spring unattached. Samry Deshawn's a 2022 All-American, slowly trying to get back into top form. Don't know if she'll be there, but even if she's a top 100 runner, massive help for a team that's just trying to get into the national meet. And the depth overall is like solid. It's not the best depth, but there's not any. I don't see there being any like legitimate, like massive weaknesses, within the 4 or 5 spots of this lineup. I think this team's going to be generally just good enough for it to not be an issue. So I'll take Northwestern. I don't honestly like. I think we kind of got this right on the just miss side. For the women's, I feel pretty confident about it. But if there was a team I had to choose, Northwestern for sure.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I will continue to pound the table for Clemson, but I think Northwestern's a good one as well. Let's pick one honorable mention team to maybe just briefly touch on before we get into our number 25 teams. For me, the one team that I wanted to highlight on the men's side is Tennessee Volunteers. Interesting squad this year. You got Redane in there, who should be a good low stick, and then you got a couple new additions, Edgeworth, Mappy. I think Edgeworth in particular is very, very interesting for this team if he can turn into what we thought he could out of high school after transferring over from Colorado. I think we could see an interesting squad. Again, this is not a team that's ready to compete in any way on the national level, but I think we could see this team put together the outlines of a national qualifying team for next year if the right guys take a step forward. So I think they're going to be one team I'm going to be keeping an eye on throughout the year, even if it means they just have 3 guys that look good. I think if that's what happens, then I think they're going to be very happy with how this year went, and they'll be very targeted with their recruiting transfer portal additions going into the 2026 season, where I think they could make some noise.
Do they get to the national meet this year?
No. I don't think there's a chance.
But you like them enough to
No, I like them. They're interesting. I shouldn't say I like them in the sense that they're going to make the national meet. I like them in the sense that I'm excited to kind of see what they do this year, and see who pops.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a primer year. Like these guys are all set to return in 2026 and in 2027. It's more just about like establishing a foundation and building for the future. So I'm 100% with you. That's why we have them in honorable mention. I'll take Boise State men. I like really wanted to like Boise State last fall. I just didn't get enough overall. And they're going to lose a handful of like key names, but yet they would come in with Misha Keogh from, I want to say it's like North something college. Can't even remember, honestly. But he's a pretty solid name. Christian Graham's pretty solid. Patrick Kiprop, not from Arkansas, but from Cincinnati, the guy who was third at Joe Piani. He comes in and he joins Boise State. He'll be a potentially really good low stick. And then you have Brian Kaprotich. He was already there. He returns. There's a bunch of solid dudes here that like I would not sleep on. Like, do I think Boise State could get into the national meet? Maybe, yeah. Like, I actually think that's a possibility. I think they would probably need a push scenario, but I don't dislike this Boise State team. I'd be very careful about them.
Yeah, I think with them, the hardest thing working against them is just the region that they're in, right? They're in a
Yeah.
mountain region that is quite crowded, and to your point, they
No, they're
will
in the
have
West
to
region.
or West region. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, it's still not quite as crowded as the mountain region, right? But still a very solid one where they're going to have to beat a pretty good team, or they're going to have to just pick up some points. Which hey, we've seen this Boise State team pick up points throughout the year before, so it wouldn't be shocking. Hey, they run at some lower level meets, beat up on some of the lower level automatic qualifying teams, and all of a sudden, hey, they put themselves in a good Colos scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I would even argue though that like the West regions, like teams that are in the same tier as Boise State, I would say that there's more of them in the West region this season than there is the Mountain region. You know, like I kind of like you could make at least make the argument, right? Whether that's Gonzaga and Portland
Yeah,
and Cal Poly and
there's maybe
things that
more like solid teams, right, in the West
right.
region.
Yeah. No, I mean, you could say the same thing about Mountain, where it's like, well, depending on who Texas Tech has and Montana State and Air Force and yada, 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 the list goes on. So, okay, who's on the women's side did you have as like one of your more favorable honorable mentions?
Yeah, I had the Harvard women. I
Oh,
thought they were an interesting squad. You look at their fourth place at Northeast last year, and they return a lot of that lineup that scored. They're missing out, I think, on Ella Gilson, I believe, is the only one I think that is going to be missing. And that I like what you get out of Molly Malagu, Penelope Solomon. Like you have some interesting names that have run some solid track times. It seems like Harvard usually is able to patch together a very competent, solid lineup. And I'm curious to see some decent incomers. I like what they're bringing in with Ella Cohen, 446 in the mile, 940 in the 32. Real solid prospect there. I'm not super bullish on this team in terms of making it to nationals, but I think they at least have an outside shot considering the region that they're in. And I think they have a strong base level of talent.
I don't think Ella Hagen ran 940 in the 2 mile. I think that was probably 3K.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. You're right. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah, no, it's with all these different events, I understand. Yeah, I would say, although she did run 928 in the 3K, it looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Well,
pretty
not
solid.
that far off then. All
No,
right. 943K.
it's still a little far off,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
okay.
Not as far
Um,
off.
yeah, but good pick, good pick. I will say that I like them a little bit more now that I'm like looking at them than I did maybe initially. But I think you're basically hoping that Malachi, Selman, and Cohen, along with maybe Dylan McElhaney, I don't know how you say that name, are like really, really good. And
Yeah.
even then, you don't have a complete top five that like we can put together. So that was my hesitancy on them. I am going to take Southern Methodist. This is a team that I would be very, very careful about because not only do they bring back like a few decent names, right? Macy Hilton, 441 mile, Ellie Gramis in 946 3K, fine, but it's their newcomers. Electra Higgins is an incoming freshman. She was 13th at NXN. Urka Kirk, Foot Locker finalist. They have a transfer from Poland who was the Polish XC champ and has run 206 for 800 meters. They have I'm so sorry, I'm going to try to butcher this name, but they have a Kenyan incoming who's run 16:18 for 5K. Ruby Little is a transfer from, I want to say, Arkansas. She's run 17:06. Rose Mubaru, this sister of Stanley Mubaru, she has great pedigree, right? Like there's enough here where like if you piece together some of these women and enough of them hit, that what South Central region I think Southern Methodist is in. I want to say SMU's in the South
I think
Central.
that's right. Yep.
I'm just saying, man, that's maybe not this year, but maybe next year. It's going to be interesting.
I do always I am a sucker for the recruit that comes in with high like cross country pedigree in terms of like the championships they've won, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's from like we've seen that a lot from like England and stuff like that. But I do think that usually transfers pretty well. Like if you're able to win, again, competition can be all over the place depending on what national meet you're running in, but I really do think that that ability to compete at the top of your field, it usually translates fairly well to the NCAA level. So yeah, I like that pick on your end. But why don't we move on and go to our number 25 team in our preseason rankings for the men's side, and that is yours and many others, Virginia Tech Hokies.
I know what many of you are thinking. Garrett, shame on you. Shame on you for using your influence and your bias to put your team at the number 25 spot. And I know. In fact, I was so aware of my bias, I didn't even put them there. I had Virginia Tech and just missed. So if you want to blame anyone, blame Rachel, blame Finn, Finley, and Mike. Those are the four who all four of them said, put him in 25. Come on, we know you want to put him in there. And so we did. So I know some people might think, oh man, that's a bias thing. I was not the one, however, who ranked them.
Yeah, so an interesting squad. You got George Cootie, who I think had a nice breakout year last year. I think a true potential low stick for this squad. You have an interesting second piece in Nicholas Kipchirchir. And then you have a lot of other interesting guys. Declan Reimer, who had a good track season. William Winters in the mix there. Ethan Coleman. I don't love the depth overall. I really do think this season kind of comes down to how well does and how consistent is Nicholas Kipchirchir, right? I think he's the guy that has the ability to elevate. If you're looking at his track times, 13:39 in the 5K, 28:22. There's not a whole lot of guys on this roster that can hit those heights, at least on the track. And I think if he's pretty close to Cootie, again, I don't need him to be like side by side with him, but if he's legitimately up there and giving them a strong number two, I think this lineup looks a lot more potent because you feel good about the top two, and you can piece together the rest of these slots with solid guys. They're not going to be spectacular, but they can be guys that, hey, finish in the top 150 at the national meet, right? So I think for me, the biggest X factor for this team is Kipchirchir and how well and how consistent he runs throughout the season.
I see where you're coming from. For me, it's like it's a matter of, is Kipchirchir going to be consistent enough throughout the entirety of the season? Because
Sure.
I think he did show secondary low stick scoring at
Right.
Panorama Farms, and he showed it at Southeast, right? But he wasn't there for ACCs, and he struggled at NCAA's. So I see what you're saying, and I
Yep.
agree with you there. But I think the bigger X factor is Linus Chepkakai, I think is how you say it, has rumored to have joined Virginia Tech, or at least signed with Virginia Tech last summer with an altitude converted 13:33 5K mark, right? Since then, he's only raced on the track outdoors this past spring. Wasn't great, wasn't necessarily amazing, but if we're willing to believe that he is at least 90% as good as that altitude converted mark suggests, then this kind of changes the dynamic. All of a sudden now you plug a hole, even if he's not consistent, and the scoring influence of this team is less heavily on the depth, which is what we've both said is the weakest part of their lineup, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think their depth is going to be just better this year by simply returning Declan Reimer
Right.
and William Winter, right? Like I like those guys, and they bring in a few other solid names, return a few solid guys. Ethan Coleman being another one, not from Notre Dame, but just their own Ethan Coleman. So I like Linus Chepkakai is kind of like the X factor there. I think he kind of determines exactly how this lineup is going to be structured moving forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair call. 90% of that 1333 would be huge, right? That's a
Yep.
number 4 scorer for you, like at least, and someone that again gives a little bit more potency to this roster. Be interesting to see if they can get anything on the grass out of their more middle distance guys. Sam Eden's coming in from D2 Charleston. But he was 57th at NCAA's on the D2 level, so maybe some potential there. And Victor Idamer, who was very, very good on the track, 55 in the mile, 337 in the 15. If we can see, I think Virginia Tech would say, hey, if we can get either of you guys to be like top 6, top 7
Yep.
guys for us this year, at least give us a little bit of a fail safe, I think they would be thrilled. So definitely, I mean, a very interesting squad to look at. And hey, if they can time up their progression as well as they did last season, where they peaked at the perfect time, I think this is a team that can exceed this number 25 rank.
Well, we're going to move on to the 25th ranked women's team. And in a funny twist of fate,
Yeah,
that women's team is the University of Virginia, the arch rival of Virginia Tech. The Virginia women, let's break it down real quick. They were 14th at the national meet last year, roughly aligned with how their season went. We kind of thought they'd be closer to the top 10, but generally a fine, solid season, right? The problem, however, is that they lose Margot Appleton. They lose Jenny Schilling. They lose Cameron Menninger. And they lose Sophie Atkinson. That isn't just a lot of low stick scoring. That isn't just a lot of middle lineup stability or back end contribution. That's also a lot of lost experience.
mm-hmm.
And now, if you're Virginia, you are left with hoping that Jillian Boucher can replicate her Nutty Comb performance from last fall throughout the entirety of the season. You can hope that Tatum David will translate her recent progress on the track to the grass. And you got to hope that your star incoming recruit, Abby Faith Cheeseman, is as good as her pedigree suggests she can be right away.
Yeah, you're banking on a lot of internal development, right? Supplemented by some very, very young incoming freshmen, right? And this is what makes me a little nervous about this squad, and again why I like Clemson, where it's like at least I feel good about 3, right? But yeah, I mean with Virginia, you have the pieces, right? It's not a question of hey, do you have enough talent to be this 25th ranked team? I think it's clear you listed off plenty of names that come in with plenty of pedigree. I think Tatum David is probably that one that sticks out to me where I'm like, hey, if we can get the Tatum David that we thought we might be getting when she first came to Virginia, then I think this is a team that again has maybe a top 2, top 3 that is pretty complete and potent enough that they have enough pieces on the back end to put together a solid top 5. So very curious to see what we can get out of David because 112th place finish at NCAA's isn't going to be good enough for Virginia out of her this year. She needs to be more top 70, top 80. I think for them to be able to get to this ranking that we're where we have them currently.
Yeah, it's gonna be. It's also another team that like you have to kind of just respect them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they've done enough over since like the regime change of Vin Lanana and then who has since kind of filled out his staff, where Coach Joel Amaral has like consistently showed up and they've consistently been competitive. And it's rare that they haven't been, at least like since they've begun to rise back to the national ranks. And so I think there's too much pedigree, there's too much talent, there's too much upside, there's too much time to have developed for this team to not be ranked. It felt weird putting them at 25. Like we've kind of
Yeah.
historically just let them crack the top 20 and go wild. But this is a team that has certainly been they were tricky to write about. Because they have other depth pieces, right? Like they have Kate D'Souza,
Yep.
they have Mary Ellen Udele, they have other Kerrigan Cheney, I think is like one of their key signees, right? They have Stella Kermes who ran 4:13 for 1,500 meters this past spring. There are pieces on the back end, but you also have to hope that those pieces develop in addition to your low sticks. So or hopeful low sticks, I should say. So that's what makes this a tricky team to gauge.
Yeah, and I remember us having the same conversation last year about Udalay, about hey, coming in from Arkansas, hey, can she provide just some back end scoring potentially? And we just didn't get to see her very
No,
much in a Virginia singlet, only racing twice and not running very well. But hey, if she can get back to, again, she was 136th at NCAA's for Arkansas in 2023. If she can get back to that kind of level, she's a solid back end scorer for this team. But yeah, it's an interesting team to write about because it's like so much of it is projection, right? Especially when you're considering like Abby Faith Cheeseman, who, again, really good credentials. I ran with her sister at Belmont. Her brother was on Belmont's team right after me. A family of really good runners. So she should be as primed as anyone coming into this level, but they kind of need her to
they
step
do.
into like a top 5 spot realistically for this team to get where they want to be.
All right, let's move off of that. We will go to the men's side. Ben, it has now come the day where the Oklahoma men are now ranked in our preseason rankings. Oklahoma Sooners, the men, coming in at 24. And this is a classic case of a load up on Kenyans and let's just hope it works kind of thing. And it might. It very well might. Tobias Chariot is a strong name in his own right.
Yep.
He has run 28-27 for 10K as of this past spring. He was 104th at the national meet last fall, but he was 10th at SEC, 6th at Otario Barrios, 18th at Joe Piani. It's really then the three other guys that they got after last fall during the winter months. Evans Biwat, he's run 13:49, 8:42 in the steeple. They've got Ronald Nagedich, who ran 13:38 for 5K this past spring, and Shadrach Kiptu, 13:22 for 5K. Through 4 runners, in theory, this is a top ranked team that even
Mhm.
could theoretically be better than 24. A, there's no promise that those guys will translate that success to the grass,
Yep.
especially not all of them. There's no promise there. And then two, to say that the depth is bad would be an understatement. It's really bad. Like I don't even know who their fifth guy is going to be. Um, I don't know if it matters, but it's going to be interesting.
I think it does matter, and I think one of the interesting subplots for their season is, hey, can Ahmad Kadri get his waiver like
That's
approved
right.
to be able to run for them? Because I mean, he's not going to blow your socks off, but he would be a super competent fifth scorer for them and really elevates them to another level. So
Good
if he
point.
does get that eligibility, transferring in from Eastern Kentucky, I believe, he provides them with a full 5 guys, right? And again, you're really banking hard on those 5 guys, and you're banking on Kadri getting that waiver approved. So there's a lot of ifs in that sentence. This isn't Arkansas from years past where we've talked about it, where hey, you have 3 or 4 studs where you're like, all right, you feel really good about locking them into like top, like All American finishes or top 60th place finishes. There's still a lot of variability here. Clearly, the talent is there, but hey, are they going to be consistent? And are they going to be able to translate that to the grass, as you mentioned? Like, they really need all the stars to not necessarily perfectly align, but they need to be pretty darn close for this team to be able to, one, make the national meet, and two, make a little bit of noise at the national meet, because they just have so little margin for error from a depth perspective. And then they really don't have a lot of margin for error for these guys not to be ready to translate their track success to the grass at an appropriate level.
I think that was perfectly put. I think the point about Kadri is, and of course, if you're listening to this, I mean, I still have to write that article today. But the point about Kadri, that is just hey, listen, these things are a beast to write. I was looking
Yeah.
back at last year, like how many of the 52 articles, including just miss and honorable mentions, I had to write, and I think the number was like 41 or something
Oof,
like
that's
of
too
them.
many. Too many.
Yeah, this year I think I'm primed to take like 20, which is it's awesome. Maybe even less. I don't know, but this is what happens when you have a great team behind you. So, um, Kadri's going to be 100%. Like if he gets the waiver for this fall, I mean, like it. You could argue that he would be the single most important fifth man of
Oh,
any
yeah.
cross country team in the country. It wouldn't be close, actually.
because he provides some backup to, hey, if one of those top four guys doesn't run extremely well, okay, at least you have a backstop, right, for that fourth
100%.
place score.
Yeah. So I just, yeah, I don't want to repeat everything you said because I just fully agree with it. But this is like if if my like coaching career was on the line and this is the squad I'd have, I'd either be like, I'm about to be a millionaire after this season, or I'm about to get fired, and there's no in between.
Oh man, yeah, it's going to be an interesting season for them. At the very least, we're going to see them develop throughout the season. It's probably going to be all over the place, and we're probably going to have times when we have them ranked in the top 20, and times when we don't even have them ranked at all. Right? I think they certainly could be all over the place. But let's move on to our number 24 team on the women's side, and that is the Florida State Seminoles. Coming off of a what place finish, 24th place finish, appropriate at nationals this past fall. They do lose a decent amount, but they do have Shipperin and Blade that they are returning. And Shipperin in particular, 57th place finish at NCAA's last year, pretty close to being an All-American. You do have some interesting names like Agnes McTeague.
No,
That's coming.
Agnes Matisse
She's
not there
gone too.
anymore. Yeah, she's gone.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
that hurts. They really lose a lot. It is going to be, they are really going to be putting together, at least from this national lineup, a lot of pieces here to be able to get back to this 24th place finish.
Yeah, the thing with Agnes Matisse though is that like I don't think she was great last fall. Don't get me wrong, like she was on the
Yeah.
fringes, but you bring back Shipperin, right? Shipperin, however you say that name. She's a low stick. She's a legitimate low
Yeah.
stick, top 50 name. And then Riley Blade, I think like people forget she ran 15-16 in the 5K or in the 5K indoors. By the way,
Yep.
indoors. She's really good aerobically. She's really, really strong. She's a ranked name in our top 50. I think that she's going to be a plenty effective 1-2 there. And then they bring in Oakley Olson from Utah Valley, experienced veteran, not the flashiest scorer ever, but at least offers some back end stopping there, right? They also add Leah Taylor from the D2 scene, top D2 talent from Western Colorado, sneaky, very strong, overall very solid and consistent, can attack all three seasons. And you can see how they can kind of put something together. Like I like their top four. I think there's maybe in a top five as I have to go look down further to see like who else is kind of going to be contributing to this team. But I think there's enough on this squad for the Seminoles to kind of I don't know to get by and at least justify this ranking. Is their ceiling much higher than this? Probably not. It's probably like 22, but I don't have too much of an issue with this team, mainly because if you look at the just missed and honorable mention teams,
Yeah.
I mean I don't really know like who I could definitively say is better than them.
No, and part of this I think is also like a program ranking too of like, hey, they've been able to develop and they do have a stability in terms of just making the national meet out of the South Regional as well. And hey, when you do have a true low stick on your team, you have a little bit more margin for error for putting together the pieces behind that person, especially if you have traditionally recruited from the freshman level and on the transfer portal pretty well. You can imagine, hey, they've put together the pieces to be able to at least put out a competent lineup that is national caliber. So I hear you. There's just a lot of question marks here, and I think that's my nervousness with this team is you're translating again, like we talked about with Virginia, you're translating a lot of projection moving forward to be able to get them to this point.
I think it's also important to note that like Sue Altorf should be coming back. She's run 4:31 in the
That
mile
would
and
be big.
9:14 in the 3K, and that was all this past earlier this year. So 2024 pretty not great on the grass at least admittedly, but like I like to think that a 14 3K runner can at least be a half decent contributor on the grass. I think it's at least fair to assume. So I think there's pieces. Like, is the depth great? No. Am I like super excited about a ton of these names? No. But Nicole Dinan is, what, 419 for 1500, 446 in the mile. Like there's a few things that you can piece together there where if they make enough progress, I wouldn't exactly be, panicking. So
Yeah. No, totally fair point. Let's move on to number 23 on the men's side, and that is the Tulane Green Wave. So, really interesting team here. A lot of kind of moving pieces throughout this program over the last couple of years, and this year is no exception. We already talked about Rogelio Baptista de Amaro from South Carolina
sure.
coming in a ton of great times on the track 28:23 in the 10K, 7:58, 3K, 13:49 in the 5K. Brings in a lot of talent. You're adding him on top of Bernard Chariot, Silas Keptanui, who are both very, very strong names. You also have Gilbert Rono coming in from Texas A&M. You have Cooper Sorensen coming in as a grad transfer. You have a lot of interesting pieces here. And then you have, again, at the top, guys that you feel good about leading your line. This feels like one of the more complete lineups that we've talked about so far, and probably will talk about in this entire episode, really. Because if you look up, hey, the team ahead of them, certainly not a not a complete lineup ahead of them. I really like this team. I think they have a lot more. They have a higher floor than a lot of these teams we've talked about, but still have a little bit of ceiling there. Because hey, if Amaral really puts it together and he can be like a true like low stick next to Chariot and Kiptanui, then hey, this is a really potent squad here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good team. Like this is a
Yes.
very good team. If you look at Bernard Chariot and Silas Kiptanui, Kunin and Amaral, and if you put those four together and you say, I need the best out of you all on the same day, and they give it to you, they're way better than 23. The challenge
Yep.
is that the depth, which I think is actually half decent, but it's spotty, and Bernard Chariot's not consistent. And Kiptanui, like, we don't really know what he looks like on the grass yet. He was 825 steeplechase, but how does that translate? Kunin, 1337 in the 5K, but we also he just wasn't amazing necessarily last fall. It wasn't terrible, but wasn't amazing. And Amaral, he was really good on the track, but he's never raced in cross country, at least not collegiately. So
Yep.
what do you expect there? Like Gilbert Rono, 337 for 1500 meters, 17th South Central Regional meet last year, but again, what does that look like in 2025? And so I think this is a complete team. I like how you phrased it, half decent depth and maybe still developing ceiling, which is 100% true. But like a lot of these guys aren't necessarily like proven cross country guys yet.
No.
They're guys who have been very good on the track, maybe even great, but haven't really had the opportunity to translate or show us that. So this ranking, it gives credence to the idea like that these guys are going to just be flat out better, but not that everyone's going to fully translate their track success to the grass.
Right. I just like, hey, your potential number 5 runner, Gilbert Rono. He was 17th at the South Central
Yeah.
Regional last year. Like that to me like is just like when we talked about a lot of number 5s for a lot of these teams so far. That feels like just so far and away better than what anybody else
Yeah.
potentially has, right? And that
Well,
just
it's
that
low.
that
I mean,
yeah, I mean that makes me feel great in comparison to everybody else. Again, yeah, like you said, bar is very low for depth. But that at least gives you, hey, we kind of know who our top 5 is, and then we have a couple pieces that, hey, if they develop, they could insert into that top 5. So yeah, I'm excited about this squad. I'm a lot higher on them than I have been in years past when they brought in maybe even bigger names through the transfer portal previously.
all right, let's wrap it up. And we will end with our TSR number 23 team on the women's side. That is Boise State. Boise State, they pretty much return everyone from last fall with the exception of Yasmin Margini. So a little bit of a
Mm-hmm.
tough loss there. But otherwise, return Kaya Robertson, who is in our top 50. Julia Keisler will return after not competing last fall. She'll be a pretty solid name. Emily Jobs is very strong. I like Autumn Ost or Ost, how you say that, whenever she's at the top of her game.
Mm-hmm.
This is by no means the best like lineup that maybe we've talked about, but it's complete and it's balanced and it's experienced and it has the opportunity to be definitively better than they were last year, both by just returning runners and by developing and by adding Keisler back into it. So I don't really know if there's like a defining characteristic of Boise State where I go, whew, this team dangerous. But or do I think they're competent enough to be 23rd in the country this fall? Yes, and I can tell you that in our conversations with coaches leading up to this, one coach in particular was like, I think they're going to be sneaky good, better than people realize.
Yeah, I mean, 6th at the West Regional last year. You are losing Margini, but I mean, again, this is a team that doesn't blow your socks off in terms of their scoring potency, but they had 7 women in the top 80 scorers at the West Regional. I mean, you look at who else was able to do that in the West Regional. It was Gonzaga, Washington, Stanford, Oregon. No one else in that region was able to put together that kind of concerted depth. So what you're banking on here is, hey, you just slide this group like 20 places higher with the experience, and you got a pack that, hey, is now your 3rd through 6 scorers. That is a stable group of veterans at this point, right? That know how to run these races and give you that baseline of competence. Again, when we're talking about this level of the rankings, you either need to have a super high ceiling, like we've talked about with Oklahoma, or you just need to be confident to the point that we're not like super scared if one person has a bad day that you're just going to fall off the map. Boise State is not a team that I'm that worried about. I mean, maybe if Robertson just like falls off and doesn't run well, that's pretty problematic for them. But as long as she's good, the rest of these names you look at and you're like, all right, we can survive an off day here or there because we just have enough overall depth.
Well, that and like Hannah Ackerman ran 9:54, I want to say, in the steeplechase this past spring, and she wasn't really like a major contributor for this team last fall.
No.
Like you add her and she gets even better. Like there's a handful of women who were sophomores last fall that should be even better this year now that they've developed. There is great completeness to this team that frankly we didn't talk about with the 24 and 25 ranked teams. So balanced, complete. Those are kind of my favorite teams. The teams that are never going to be the flashiest teams on paper, but I love a complete team, and that's why I like Boise State. So yeah,
absolutely. I think they're a team where they will land within 4 spots plus or minus of our rankings, and like we will feel pretty confident in that range.
So you think their ceiling? You think their ceiling's 19?
Yeah, I would be surprised if they got much below that.
Okay, I'd have to think about that.
Part of it is, hey, you get someone that maybe is a true number 2 up there, and again, if that pack moves up a little bit, I just don't see the explosive scoring potential for this team that gets much higher.
I get that. No, I respect that. Okay, cool. I think that's it. That's all we got. We will cover the next set of teams that we release in next week's episode, just like we did last year. Go check out our YouTube page, getting a lot of traction there. Appreciate that. Everyone who's following along, subscribing to us on YouTube, and of course, ratings and reviews on Apple, on Spotify. We greatly appreciate it. I was telling Ben last week or two about some of our metrics and numbers that are coming in, and they are encouraging. And so we appreciate that. Thank you for everyone who is following along, and go get a subscription on the Stride Report to read all of these rankings and read up on the in-depth analysis. Ben, did I miss anything?
Nope. I think you got it all. Like I said at the top, these are some of the best articles to read because they're just so comprehensive. They're longer than you would ever imagine. And again, I'll say it like I did maybe a couple weeks ago. This is what got me hooked on TSR. So if you want a reason to get a subscription, this is certainly your gateway in. But we'll leave it there. We got plenty of teams to talk about next week. We're in August. We're inching closer to the start of the season, which is always exciting. But until next week, Garrett, I'll talk to you.